Hey guys, hope you're all doing well today. Today I have a survival beginner's guide for you. I originally was doing a tips and tricks video, but I think that this is going to be better. Hopefully it helps you guys get through the match if you guys are having some trouble getting through a survival match. For more experienced players, the majority of this will probably be pretty self-explanatory. So this is mainly for people who really haven't done survival in the past. Maybe they've just died on their first few runs, so they're really put off from even trying to do that again. So I'm hoping that this will help you guys out. I really want everybody who has not played survival or who has trouble playing survival to really give this one a shot because the game is incredible. The game mode is what continues to bring older people back to the first installment of the franchise. So I really want you guys to be giving it a real good try if you have not really given it the opportunity just yet. So first off, I kind of want to explain what the survival game mode is because I'm sure that there's some of you that are watching the video that have actually never even attempted to do a survival run before. I'm sure you guys have seen videos here and there and you've seen people talking about it, but you may not have actually given it a fair shot, so you have no idea what the game mode is actually about. And essentially, the player assumes control of an SHD agent sent to retrieve a lost case of experimental antivirals from the Dark Zone. En route, their helicopter crashes, leaving them stranded in a blizzard and suffering from sepsis. They must reach the Dark Zone and complete their mission before the infection kills them. Agents can access survival from the terminal and can choose either PvP or PvE game modes, along with playing solo or matchmaking to play with others as a team. A typical survival match will include the following steps: craft a virus filter, enter the Dark Zone, retrieve the antivirals. This is actually optional, but it is worth extra points. Craft a flare gun and call for an extraction, and defeat the hunter that spawns in. After this, you'll board the helicopter and extract successfully. To start off the match, each player will start the game inside a hideout that's near the edge of Manhattan. Everybody starts with standard gear, a standard sidearm, a medkit, and a torn hazmat suit for clothing. Inside this mode, there's going to be a few things about your agent that you're going to need to take care of, a big one being the cold. Your character can actually freeze to death in this mode, so it's very important to keep yourself warm. You can keep yourself warm by entering shelters, which can be shown on the map, and also warming up at fire barrels. Your hunger is going to be linked directly to your health regeneration. In survival, you are only going to naturally regenerate up to the nearest third of your health segment, even when you're inside or outside of combat. This is going to leave you weakened unless you enter a hideout, activate a healing skill, or use a medkit. Eating food is generally how you're going to increase your health regeneration, even while you're in combat. Hunger can be reduced by consuming energy bars or canned food, which can be found inside refrigerators, ice chests, backpacks, and dropped from enemies that you defeat around the city. You can't actually die from having the hunger status effect, but it does prohibit you from regenerating health, so I like to recommend to use one, even if you only have one health segment lost. This can help you in dire situations. Your agent's thirst is linked directly to the awareness of your environment, which aids in detecting lootable containers that are inside the world. The normal minimap is disabled in survival, which forces players to rely on their own senses to scavenge. Thirst is decreased by drinking water or sodas, which can be found in the same methods that you can find food, but you can also find waters and sodas inside vending machines that are scattered around the map, especially inside the subway stations. Drinking water or soda causes containers within the radius to glow as orange wireframes, even through solid obstacles. The lower your agent's thirst, the wider the radius grows. Like hunger, players cannot die from being thirsty, but managing it better can help locate resources, especially earlier in the game. Now, let's talk about the cold. These numbers that are on the top right corner of your screen can be really confusing, so I'm going to try and make it as simple as I can. The number that's on the very top right that is flashing in a red color, that is the temperature that it is outside in your area. And the number to the left of that is your agent's cold resistance. So this number is going to increase the better the clothing is that you pick up. You can replenish your cold meter by visiting fire barrels or shelters that are around the map. There are also fire barrels that you can approach and light yourself. If your meter goes empty, your agent is considered freezing, and you'll begin to lose your health slowly over time. If you end up dying while freezing, it is important to note that you cannot self-revive in this state. Warmer clothing can be found inside backpacks, suitcases, cabinets, as well as dropped from enemies, and crafted inside the hideout using fabric. Another important thing that you need to keep track of is your disease. Due to the injury from the helicopter crash, agents are infected with sepsis, giving them a life expectancy of just over 1 hour, which is about 62 minutes of in-game time. This is the survival's primary limiting factor. If their infection timer expires, the agent will die and cannot be revived. This timer can be briefly paused by using medicine or painkillers. Medicine will pause the timer for 5 minutes, and painkillers will pause it for 2 minutes. Both can be found from dropped enemies or looting red medical bags that are found around the map. They're most likely found inside landmarks, pharmacies, and ambulances throughout the city. With efficient use of both of these items, the infection timer can be effectively extended well past 2 hours. However, they are not a permanent solution. With every use, medicine and painkillers become less and less effective because your agent is going to be building a tolerance against them. Eventually, you'll use them and they're only going to last a few seconds. Hideouts are the equivalent of safe houses inside the main game and provides a safe haven from not only the storm but from other players and NPCs as well. PvP is disabled within hideouts, and each one contains a crafting table and refills an agent's health bar and temperature meter upon entering. Hideouts have multiple entrances, usually 2 to 3, which are bathed in the glow of bright orange circles above them. At the start of a survival session, each agent begins inside a hideout near the borders of Manhattan. All hideouts are potential spawn points that have loot containers providing 1 painkiller and 1 fabric. At the start of the match, your agent is going to have no skills, a basic sidearm, equipment, and clothing. Aside from looting, better gear can be crafted at the crafting tables located in all the hideouts. You'll need to obtain materials before you can start crafting at the crafting table. Enemies, containers, and deconstructed items will provide the materials you need, such as tools, electronics, weapon parts, fabric, and division tech. Each of these come in 3 different rarities, with the exception of division tech always being high-end. Each material has a corresponding type for deconstructing and receiving that material. For example, you can receive electronics by scrapping gear mods. You'll receive tools by scrapping weapon attachments. You can receive weapon parts from scrapping weapons and fabric from scrapping any gear. Division tech can only be found from the division tech containers inside the Dark Zone or from the antiviral crate that you pick up in the Dark Zone. These are used to craft important items that improve your agent's chances of survival, with more advanced blueprints available in hideouts closer to the Dark Zone. Lower tier materials can be converted to the next tier at a ratio of 3 to 1, and division tech can be converted to any other high-end material at the crafting table. There are certain skills that require medkits to craft, such as the first aid or the support station skill. Other craftable items include medkits, weapons, armor, clothing, skills, flare gun, and virus filters. The only items that are required to complete a survival session successfully are the basic virus filter, which is used to actually enter the Dark Zone, and a flare gun to signal an extraction helicopter. You can also pick a flare gun up from other agents that are unconscious, or extract on another agent's helicopter, provided that there is a space on the helicopter available. The helicopter has 4 spaces on each extraction. Now that I've covered the game mode mechanics, I'm going to go over some different aspects of the survival game mode, starting off with landmarks. Just like the Dark Zone inside the main game, landmarks are generally where groups of veteran or elite enemies can be found. If an agent is well prepared, clearing one of these landmarks can provide wealth of weapons, items, and materials. Beware that the sound of battle will attract more enemies inside PvP survival. A landmark appears on the map as a purple fist icon, or a gray icon indicates that it's already been cleared. Lootable containers inside the Dark Zone are going to be a little different compared to the containers you see outside of the Dark Zone. Instead of providing you with weapons and gear as usual, these containers are going to drop sealed caches based off of the container type. You will also see these caches dropped from enemies that you defeat inside the DZ. Any named enemy that you defeat inside the DZ will drop survival caches. You can hold up to 6 of these caches at a time, and you will open these caches inside the main game once you extract. I personally recommend extracting with survival caches because each one has a chance for exotics and classified gear, but we'll go over that in just a second. Extracting may seem easy, but it's actually one of the hardest parts that people struggle with because of one enemy. Anytime an extraction is called in, an enemy will appear in a cloud of smoke and an EMP blast, and will attempt to eliminate your agent. Hunters are amongst the deadliest foes inside the Division franchise because they're well armed with SHD tech and advanced in combat. They also heal themselves using skills and medkits. If the player goes down in combat against the hunter, they will almost certainly make sure to eliminate the player by performing a brutal execution. The amount of hunters corresponds to how many players are within the radius of the extraction zone when called in. Additional hunters will spawn to compensate. All hunters must be defeated before the helicopter lands. The extraction takes 3 minutes to land when called in. If the hunter is defeated within that time, the helicopter will land immediately upon arrival, and will only stay for 30 seconds, so make sure to board quickly. But if you do miss your ride, don't worry. You can call in another helicopter without an additional hunter spawning in, as long as you're within the same extraction site. You can also visit all 3 extractions to take out all 3 hunters if you'd like to. Each hunter defeated will offer additional points to your survival score. You can see your survival score by visiting the main menu. 20,000 survival points are needed for your weekly assignment. Now that you've successfully extracted, let's talk about scoring and rewards. Rewards are given by playing survival and will come in 2 different forms, one being sealed caches that are obtained based off of your survival rank. There are 6 possible ranks to achieve, the highest rank being Master, which will reward 4 survival caches. Before explaining the other method for obtaining rewards, I'd like to briefly explain the scoring inside survival. Keep in mind that the PvP survival mode grants a 1.2 multiplier for the final score. Simply as a time factor, I'm not going to go into full detail on how many points you receive for doing whatever activity. I will give you the basics, but if you want like a full breakdown of how you earn points in survival, I will leave a link in the description of the Division wiki that explains all of the point earning systems within the survival game mode. But to give you the basics, I can say that you'll receive points for basically just crafting things, such as your basic virus filter. You'll receive points for entering the dark zone and picking up flare guns. You can receive points for picking up your antivirals, as well as completing your extraction. And of course, you receive points for eliminating enemies, whether it be normal NPCs, veterans, elites, and especially named NPCs. You'll receive 150 points per kill. So taking out as many bosses as possible is going to reward you with the most amount of points. But there are also unique ways to earn points, such as the Punisher task, which is kill 4 hunters. This is, of course, going to be more complicated, as well as Turncloak, which is killing 4 other agents in one game, just because there's not very many people playing the game at the same time. So in order for you to achieve some of these, you would actually have to leave players alive, or you would have to play PvE mode, and that's how you would be able to achieve a lot of these. You will, of course, earn points based off of how long you survive, how many players you revived throughout the match. You receive a thirst, hunger, and disease and cold score, which those ones will rack up 5 to 10 points per 1%. You'll also receive extra points if you use your food and drink right before you board the helicopter. The higher your hunger and thirst score is, the higher points that you'll receive at the end of the match. Now that I've talked a little bit about scoring, I'll go over that second method that you can get further rewards. The next form being sealed caches that are extracted from the survival match. The player can hold up to 6 caches at a time. Sealed caches can be found inside the Dark Zone from fallen enemies, including the Hunter, landmarks, and loot containers. There are 4 different types of caches that you can get: weapons, gear, mods, and survival caches. Weapons, gear, and mods can be found pretty much anywhere in the Dark Zone, while survival caches are only obtained by named enemies and rarely can be dropped from hunters. Survival caches have a low chance to drop exotics and a higher chance to drop classified gear out of the 4 random items that are opened from the cache. Now that we've basically covered survival in its entirety, I'd like to go over some of the tips that I have that might help you extract successfully. I personally only play PvP survival, not only for my own enjoyment, but there is a 1.2 XP modifier in this game mode, so you are going to receive a little bit more XP in PvP as well. But if you would prefer to play PvE, some of these tips might not apply to you, but others definitely will. The most effective piece of advice that I have for anyone, regardless of the game mode that they're playing, is just to watch your back. Every once in a while, whether you're in or out of combat, just turn around and take a look at your surroundings. It doesn't matter if it's PvE or PvP. Players will either attempt to shoot you in the back or sneak up behind you and steal the loot from the enemies that you're defeating. It's not only players. Other mobs of enemies might aggro on you from behind while you're engaging a mob in front of you. The last thing that you want is to die to a small group of rioters while engaging with a heavy elite Riker. You'd be surprised how often just turning around and looking behind you has saved your life, even if it's not from another player. I'd also recommend listening to the server. I do personally try to hunt players immediately. The faster the players are taken out of the server, the less threats I have to face inside the Dark Zone. So listen inside the world for distant gunshots and explosions. These are easily indicated by another player in combat. Also, listening for nearby explosions usually indicates a booby trap being set off. I'm going to let this stuff drop on the ground and then I'll pick it up after. Okay, something just went off. Ooh, he got me with that. That was actually pretty good. Traps are often placed at entrances of buildings and are not commonly set off by NPCs, so if you hear one, you're almost likely hearing an agent. This is also a good indicator that you can easily be tracked by sound. Any sound that you make while engaging in NPCs can often be heard by other players. There's also a few visual indicators that you can use to either track players or that players can use to track you. Anything that drops on the ground can be used as a beacon for other people. If you're fighting a mob in the middle of the street and one of the NPCs drops a clothing item, that bright teal beam is seen from a very long distance away from other players. If something drops, try to pick it up as quickly as you can to avoid other players from seeing it. There are visual indicators as well for other players to spot you easily, such as skills. Skills like the support station can be spotted through walls from a very far distance, making it really easy for players to spot you from far away. I personally don't recommend getting the support station unless you guys are in a full group, or if you're the last person in the server and you're mainly using it to revive yourself. Some skills also have loud noise indicators, such as the sticky bomb. It's actually possible to hear the sticky bomb from many districts away. Another way to be tracked by other players, or to track other players, is just by checking your map every so often for landmarks that may have been cleared. As I mentioned before, the landmarks will appear gray when they've been taken out. This includes landmarks inside the light zone, making it easier for players to track or be tracked down. Be aware of your surroundings when clearing a landmark, as any remaining players can ambush you from any direction. Odds are, if you've taken out a landmark, the player that's looking at the map probably knows that you're going for another nearby landmark, so they will oftentimes meet you there and ambush you when you start to take them out. One of the more obvious pieces of advice that I would have is to not be in your menu for a long amount of time while you're in the open. Try to limit your menu usage to hideouts as much as possible to avoid getting jumped by other players. I'd also like to suggest to learn the survival map as much as possible, as early on as you can. There's an interactive survival map that you can use online that may help you establish your own loot routes based off of the spawn point that you have. You can also take your time before going into the Dark Zone and spend as much time into the Light Zone roaming around and learning where things are. The faster you learn the map, the better you're going to get at surviving the survival game mode. When it comes to gear, I like to recommend scrapping gear that's rolled to electronics. Since you start off with no skills, electronic rolled gear is only going to waste a slot. This is also why I say sometimes it's worth keeping a superior rarity item over a purple rarity item. If the purple piece has electronics and your blue piece has firearms, I'd actually recommend scrapping the purple. Not only will it have better character stats for you, it also yields more crafting materials that you can use later to craft better gear. And speaking of crafting, there's a few items early on in the match that are actually worth crafting, one of them being the green extended magazine. You won't see the extended magazines in different hideouts, so it's a good idea to craft one while you're on the outskirts of Manhattan safe houses. It is possible to get a purple extended magazine to drop from enemies later on, but it's pretty rare to get. I also like to recommend crafting the Omega Rifle Suppressor, which is a superior rarity mod found in some of the hideouts closer to the Dark Zone, but not too close. The hideouts closest to the DZ are going to have different mods and won't have some of the common or superior rarity ones that you see in further hideouts closer to the outskirts of the map. And my final advice on crafting is actually a really easy exploit that you can perform to boost your survival rank. Since you need 20,000 points to obtain your weekly, this exploit can be a final factor when you need a few extra points, but you don't have time or resources to continue taking enemies out for points. So as I mentioned before, you will earn points anytime that you actually pick up a flare gun. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually just craft multiple flares, and every time you pick up a flare for the first time, you're going to receive the extra amount of points. So what you can do is craft a flare gun. You can share the flare gun within the safe room and just craft another flare gun. You can repeat this process over and over until you've hit the points that you need for your weekly. You don't actually have to hit 20,000 points within the match, because as long as you survive, you're going to get that extra like 1,400 points, and you'll receive more based off of your hunger, thirst, and cold score. But if you do hit that 20,000 requirement, that at least ensures that you're going to definitely get your weekly, even if you don't make it through the end of the match. But those are the tips that I have for surviving in survival. Hopefully this video was helpful for some of you guys that haven't given the game mode a really fair try. I promise that the more you play it, the better you'll become, and eventually we'll be extracting every time. If there's anything in this video that I didn't cover well enough, or if you've noticed that there's something that I forgot, please let me know in the comments of this video so I can do an additional updated video. But in the future, will be doing more tips and tricks. I think I started doing a tips and tricks video, but ended up just doing like a whole guide for survival, because I feel like I was kind of jumping the gun and going straight towards tips and tricks when there's a lot of you guys that probably haven't even played survival or given it a fair try. So I'm hoping now you guys will give it a chance, and then eventually within the Discord, we'll probably have arranged survival groups, which I think would be really, really fun. If you guys have not joined the Discord server yet, please do. I'll leave a link for that in the description as well. We are over 100 members already within our first day, so I'm extremely excited to see the future of where the Discord goes. I'm going to do more playing with subs in the future. I just need to set up that whole arrangement, and one of them, of course, will be playing survival, so this video may come in handy for when we get there. And maybe I'll do more of like a coaching new players in survival, where I take some of you brand new players through. I think that would be a lot of fun too. But again, if there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments down below, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.